If you're looking at saying, okay, if I run a Facebook ad campaign, Google ads, I'm going to get this many referrals, cost per acquisition, I'm looking all that. Is this buying Total Therapy Solutions a better acquisition investment for the referrals than it is for something else? 100%. All right. So let's jump into it. One of my main goals for today was talking about kind of business development. And the most important part of business development is the exit strategy. It's one thing to start a business. It's one thing to grow a business, but I think it's the most important thing to end the business. How do we end the business? And you're in that world. You are looking at acquisitions. You're looking at therapists who have grown businesses and now they're thinking about getting out. Kick us off. What are some of your thoughts on what therapists can do to best plan their exit, maybe even before they plan their launch? You can't hear me.
I don't know any business owner that other than no one that starts a practice is thinking about an exit when they start a practice. It's okay if you haven't.
I am. I Tony, an exit every single time.
Okay, well, please know that you are in the minority. You understand that, right?
I guess.
In my opinion.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so typically if listen, anyone that's watching or listening, Tony has bought and sold real estate. He's done different businesses. So if that does not sound like you, it's okay. I think a lot more when people raise money, like your colleague Jansen at HippoScribe and other companies, like when people raise money from investors, or maybe even if they borrow like an SBA loan or whatever, maybe that would be a little bit more likely that they're thinking about an exit. But even when I started my practice, and as whatever business savvy as I might sound or think I am or whatever, I definitely did not think about an exit when starting my practice. It was just I'm going to start a business based off of some knowledge and expertise that I have and confidence and whatever. So most business owners do not think about an exit, which is okay. Because if you are 7, 10, whatever years into it, if you're frustrated, if you're growing it and you're like an absentee owner, I'm sure we can get into a lot more of that, but it's okay if you haven't thought of that. I truly believe that, Tony Maritato is as you guys know from his posts and his videos and podcasts and everything, Tony, you're unique. And that's another signal of your uniqueness, which is you're thinking about an exit when starting a business, which is awesome. It's great. But again, if you're watching or listening, if you haven't thought about an exit, the ending, the landing, as you may call it, the landing, it's okay. So let's get into it.
Well, and full disclosure, I think probably what it comes from is I come from an entrepreneurial family. My mom, my dad, they were business owners on a very small level, and they had the same frustrations that I see business owners today. They could start a business. I think a lot of us could come up with an idea of how to exchange time, service, product for money. That part is pretty simple. And then they could even grow a business to a relative size. But my parents struggled with exiting the business. They never built systems. They never built processes. They were able to do everything, but as soon as they stepped out of the business would collapse. So they never took vacations. They never got away from it. And then I remember early, probably late 1990s, I was reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I was reading the E-Myth, and they were saying you should never start a business without having an exit strategy in place. And that's where I was first introduced to this concept. And it resonated with me because I saw my parents struggle for so many years. And I was like, yeah, that's totally it. I need to see what the goal is, the goal being the exit, before I ever step into that world. So that being said, when we started our physical therapy business, well, it was a personal training studio. I kind of knew right from the beginning, what am I going to do with the profit that is generated from this business? How am I going to get out of this business when I'm sick of it, when I want to do something else? And that was a major kind of guiding light for how we chose to grow the business. So we, my wife and I, we weren't married at the time. We knew that we were going to have a family. We knew that we were going to get married at some point. And we knew that we didn't want to be tied to day-to-day operations. So for us, even though it meant, I want to say this in the right way, even though it meant the business wasn't going to be as profitable as it could have been, even though it meant the patients weren't going to get seen the way we would have seen those patients, we were willing to make those concessions to produce a business that was independent of us, to produce a business that could be sold away from us, to produce a business that could be kept as an asset if we didn't want to sell the business, you know? And so everything we did in the early 2000s was focused on that guiding light of the exit is we want to be able to be home with family. We want to raise our kids. We don't want to be tied to, you know, coming in at 5 a.m., staying until 9 p.m., doing every single operation in the business. And so we made decisions with that in mind.
Awesome. So I want to ask, so Tony, do you think your practice, Total Therapy Solutions, is an asset? Is it a growing asset? Is it a regressing asset? I want to ask you that in a minute or two. I want to ask about your exit strategy. Like, what is it? Or do you plan to sell it to Athletico or someone else? Do you plan to wind it down, sell it to a PTA or a new PT, whatever? I want to hear all of that. We're going to talk about your particular options with exit strategy. One other thing that I'll mention about my practice and just other businesses, but specifically my practice, about what you just said with your parents and that they had issues or challenges with the exit part. One thing I saw my parents struggle with, so my dad was a manual laborer, lumberjack, owned a tree service. So I saw him wanting to do everything. The ego, just like a physical therapy practice owner, wanting to treat all the patients and you know, have all the word of mouth referrals go to you as the practice owner. I saw my dad, took an immense pride in cutting trees and risking his life every day, going up in his bucket truck that was with a boom that's like, I forget, 70 or whatever, 50 to 70 feet or like a really high boom. And I saw not just the physical wear and tear, because I worked a couple summers when I was younger with him, when I was real young, under the table cash. And I was like, this manual labor stuff is not for me. That was one lesson. But another lesson with my dad's business and my mom's small, like, direct mail marketing company, she prints labels and, you know, labels on pens and shirts and all that type of stuff. And she does lists and different things like that. I saw both of them not hire people and try to do everything themselves. And that was one thing for my practice when, I've had independent contractors since like 2017 or 18. Like, this is definitely before COVID. And I was able to disconnect my ego or the potential business owner ego and say, I want to have other therapists treat some of my patients or the new patients. And it's mobile. So it's like, I never even meet the patients sometimes. And so that was one thing that helped me. And I know, and that's one thing we can maybe touch on later, which is, maybe another episode, the solo micro practice owner that wants to just take Medicare and maybe cash or whatever. This is a sidebar, but I think they are screwed. They want to leave corporate. They want to do their own thing, but they're solo and they literally will have nothing to sell, because we're talking about exit strategies. They will literally have nothing to sell. We have practice owners that reach out to us all the time that are solo. And I don't even spend time anymore looking at their financials or speaking to them respectfully. I'm like, I'm sorry, we're just not interested in solo practices. You have a team, you've grown a staff, you've grown an asset. Where do you want to take it now? Do you want to talk about your asset? Is it growing? Is it expanding? Is it regressing? Is it something you're focusing on or not focusing on? Or do you want to go into your exit strategy, Tony? What do you want to go to?
Let's talk about kind of the big picture. And I really want to talk, because I had 3 messages this week from solo practice owners who are struggling. And like you said, I mean, they're frustrated. They don't know where to go. They don't know what to do. They know that they're getting older. They know that they can't keep up the intensity. And now all of a sudden they thought in their mind that they were building a business, but it's really not a business, you know? And this is where you go back to, it's a job. And it's a job that only you would be willing to do, because no other human is going to do all of the stuff that you are doing, really, when you dollar cost average for the amount that you're making. So I do think we need to provide some resources for those individuals, because there are a lot of them out there. But when you look at my situation, so like you said, and for context for other people, so we did sell our Florida clinic. That was a goal of mine, was to be able to build a business that I could sell. I've always had a dream of selling a business. And like you see in most cases, so you're like, oh, Tony sold a business. Why is he still working? Because it doesn't generate as much profit as you think a sale would generate. Whether you're talking in the millions, mine was not in the millions, or a small sale, mine was a small sale. You, after taxes, after expenses, after all the other stuff, there's just not that much left over, but it does give you a nice little chunk of cash that you could then deploy into new endeavors. When people look at my business as a whole, I've got multiple segments, and I always think it's interesting how we classify things, because in my mind, it's like, all right, I have a business. But in somebody else's mind, they're like, man, Tony's doing social media, and he's got, affiliate marketing, and he's got a physical therapy clinic. And to me, it's all just part of one business. They're just different products that the business sells. So I do, like you said, Dave, I own real estate. I had until recently owned real estate in Florida. I've sold off any real estate that I have left in Florida. So we have zero commitment financially to Florida. But real estate was always a place where I could dump extra profit that I knew was relatively stable, relatively secure. We have spun off businesses over the years. So things that we develop internally that were like, hey, this has got, relative value. Let's just spin it off as a separate business. So we had that. The real estate, of course, I've got my social media, which is generating a little bit of income, but more generating leads. That is, to me, a business that could be spun off at some point. We've got the educational component with the digital courses and digital content. Once COVID hit and the clinic shut down for a while, all of my profit, all of my income came from digital sources. And now that still is a large 50+% of revenue, and probably 70% of profit comes from digital resources, courses, things like that. And then the physical therapy clinics. So we still have 2 clinics. One's a part-time clinic, one's a full-time clinic. And like most businesses, there are times where one element generates most of the profit, while other elements are just kind of sitting there. For me right now, 2024, the physical therapy patient care is just kind of sustaining, certainly not growing, not really declining. We continue to receive referrals. It's a very kind of, for me, it's a passive source of income. And one of the things that I think is interesting is perspective brings so much value to how you look at something. So somebody would look at my situation, and you and I have talked about this. We're primarily an insurance-based practice. I stay in the insurance world because I am not the one delivering all of the services, and I'm not interested in growing my clinical team. So for me, I compare it to Costco. People will go to Costco just for the free samples. They're good enough. Even if it's something you don't like, who cares? It's free. That's kind of the insurance world, the insurance model. We know what we need to do for the patient. We deliver that value. As long as the patient keeps coming, we know that the patient sees value in what we're delivering, but at the same time, it's covered by insurance. So there's a lower bar to satisfying the requirement. But what I do is I look at that and I say, okay, I'm going to evaluate a patient today. In fact, I'm evaluating a patient today. I'm going to see that patient probably once, probably going to spend 15 to 20 minutes with that patient before I delegate the rest of the plan of care within the compliance guidelines to my physical therapist assistant. If that's $1,000 plan of care after insurance reductions and everything, in 20 minutes, I generated $1,000. Right? That's the way I look at what I do. And that makes sense to me because I put 20 minutes of my human time into creating $1,000 of revenue, even though it cost me more. Go ahead, Dave.
No, I'm listening. Go ahead. Go.
Even though it cost me more, because obviously I'm paying my PTA and I've got my operating expenses and all this other stuff. To me, generating $1,000 in revenue for 20 minutes of my time, direct patient contact, totally worth it, because then the rest of that time I'm doing social media and talking to great people like you and doing all of these other things. But that is not a valuable business for somebody like you to buy, because there is no local leadership again, if I step out, my PTAs can't operate without me, or they can't operate without a PT, and I don't have a PT. I'm the only PT. So I understand I'm sacrificing the value of that part of the asset, but I'm trying to build value in other aspects. My physical building continues to appreciate. It's leased at 100% occupancy. The land where my building is, it's a roughly a 10,000 square foot building. We've got chiropractors in there. We've got massage therapists in there. They're doing a ton of development around the building. So even though when I bought it in 2009, the next year I lost 50% of the value of the building, by now we've returned to the original value, and it's continuing to grow because we're about a mile from a hospital, and they're doing a ton of investment. There's a convention center that's going in on the corner. There's ice skating rinks and all this other stuff that's slated to be built. We're right off the I-75 corridor. I mean, it's a really prime piece of real estate. And that's something that I know within my business is going to add, exponential value over the next 10 to 20 years. And I have very little debt left on the building. It's almost completely paid off. So that's something that really I'll probably just leave for the kids. That's the way I look at all of this. And the one thing, and then I'm going to turn it over to you, that I remember hearing, my parents always grew their main wealth in real estate. Real estate is really tough. I'm not telling anybody to get into real estate, but I will say the one thing that resonates with me is people say, people get rich on transactions. People get wealthy on investments. And these are investments. These are investments that I'm not looking to sell. I'm not looking to flip. I'm not trying to make a quick $100,000. It's something that I want to have for generations, that my kids and their kids and anybody after that can just rely on that to cover, their living expenses.
So Jimmy McKay jumped in here live. Go back. I was going to read the first thing. So yeah. Jimmy commented, as we were talking about, I think, was this when we were talking about like the micro, like the solo practice owner? And Jimmy said all of these parts of the business, they stress some people out. Man, Jimmy, we miss you, and you're sitting here behind somewhere behind a laptop watching. We would love to. And I'll put the other thing up. So Jimmy McKay also said, and once it hits a point where people are overloaded, I think they just say, I'm out. I just want to work for someone. I want the clarity to do one thing. Yes, we've definitely seen that where, and I've had some colleagues and friends that had like a practice and it was themselves only. And then, at some point they might get burnout or whatever. And then they go back. Yes, Jimmy McKay announcing live. Maybe he'll be back next week. And I'll tell you what, real quick about this, I'm loving this Breakfast Club PT. And I don't mind either way. If it's three of us or if it's two of us. Two, I get to hear my own voice more often, right? Because then it's just Tony and I. And then if it's Jimmy, the host with the most, who can dribble, dish, score, block, rebound, he can do it all. Jimmy is he's busy with a bunch of projects, but we would love to have him back. Okay, let's get back on track. Definitely, maybe. Call me, maybe. Love it. Call me, maybe. Okay. So, Tony, you said a bunch of things there. I do agree that people do try to get rich off of one transaction. And that's what we're kind of seeing sometimes with practice owners. Like they're going to say like they want like a big number to exit with. And literally they're just grabbing the number out of the sky. And that's because they have usually not done what you have done, which is they have not diversified. They haven't put their money into real estate. They haven't done other things. You are very unique and different. And I think sometimes you might overlook it because you've gone through different transactions. You were just talking about you sold the one clinic to Justin Stiver. Maybe it wasn't a huge amount, but you still sold it. You put that money into real estate or you put it somewhere else. You have real estate in Ohio. You used to have real estate in Florida, and then you said you got out of that. So you are someone, and I'm not going to say you specifically, but you are the type of person who kind of gets wealthy over time over a series of transactions, not one transaction. And that's one challenge with practice owners. They're like, all right, I want to sell. I want to get out. And, I'm doing $1 million in revenue and I want, 1.5 million as the purchase price. And I'm telling you, like that example will never happen. Like no one's going to pay you $1.5 million for a practice that's doing $1 million in revenue. And maybe you're doing, 250 grand in profit. It just won't happen. I could pay you 1.5 million if you're going to hold a seller's note for, 10 or 20 years, and we're going to pay you from the cash flow of the practice. Okay, so let's get back on track. Total Therapy Solutions, you're the only PT. I was thinking about this morning as I was shaving, and I worked out this morning, and I was preparing my mind for this conversation. You're the only PT in the practice. You have PTAs that work for you, Tony.
Correct.
So are you gonna eventually just sell Total Therapy Solutions as is? Are you gonna hire a PT in the future? Are you gonna wind it down? Like what's the future of your practice? Let's say in the next, I don't know, 3 to 7 years or 3 to 10 years or whatever. I don't know what the horizon is. So maybe that's something to speak about as well.
Yeah, I mean, my method of operation over the last 20 years has kind of been, okay, we've got these things sitting almost in hibernation, and I would say my physical therapy clinic is one of those things. The actual patient care, just kind of sitting there, not growing, not declining. I already said that. I know that I'm facing some regulatory changes, like the end of 2024 marks a big change in supervision requirements. If Medicare regresses back to the previous level of supervision for my PTAs, I don't have this freedom that I have right now. So these are things that I'm trying to plan for. And I also, we have to acknowledge, like, there's a point where you're trying to make enough money to, earn a living and feel secure and feel safe and provide for your family. I feel comfortable in that. I've done that. I've got a stockpile of cash. I've got a stockpile of assets. I can pretty well weather any storm, at least for a year, whatever happens out there. So at this stage, I'm like, well, I don't really need more. I certainly don't want cash in my pocket. There's been multiple opportunities for me to take payment on things. And I'm like, I don't want to do it because I don't have anywhere to deploy that cash. And if I accept it now, I'm just going to lose 30% of it to the government. So I just let the cash sit out there. I don't necessarily try to accept it. And when I'm thinking about the business, truthfully, probably somewhere deep in the back of my head, I'm thinking if I could just kind of hit that new cash cow that is going to put hundreds of thousands of dollars of cash flow into my bank account on an annual basis, I will still keep the clinic and I will still continue to employ the team, but I won't even mess with insurance. I would just let it go. Like, who cares? I would just pay my team to be there. Very reminiscent, I was thinking about this, to our Tuesday conversation about Prasco Park and the baseball field.
No, do not go. You can go there, but I don't want you to actually go there in life. Right.
Yeah. I'm not sure what that means, but basically, if I have the resources, to fund the clinic and the operation, there's just no reason to charge for it. There are benefits to charging individuals for services. I understand those benefits. I think there's accountability. I think there's motivation. I think it forces a value decision on the person. So I'm not saying that I want a free clinic per se, because I think that goes down a dirty road. But I don't want to be in a situation where I'm stressing out. Somebody cancels, somebody no-shows, we get a denial or something like that. I don't care. I don't care about any of that stuff. It's not going to move the needle. It's not going to have a major impact. It's basic breakage. If I was in manufacturing, I know a certain number of manufactured parts are going to be broken. They're going to get stolen. They're going to get lost in shipment. That's just the cost of doing business. So I want to get to the point where I can provide these services the way I want to provide them, the way my team wants to provide them, and I'm not stressed out if the clinic's not profitable. Where are you going with what I was going to say?
So, yeah, I said, so you the Prasco Park example, the pharmaceutical example of the pharmaceutical company in the Ohio area near you that created the minor league or college level stadium. We talked about that last episode. So you just said you would, potentially do that. And I said, yeah, talk about it now, but I'm suggesting to not do that in real life. Like, actually, because they have millions of dollars to deploy. And I mean, or tens of millions or hundreds of millions or whatever, like however big they are. And what you were saying, I mean, there could be some goodwill in what you're describing. Like, cause I thought you were almost going to say almost like a pro bono clinic.
Yeah.
But then it's like you pay your staff. But then you said cash pay. So then you would drop insurances and just charge patients out of pocket. Is that what you kind of meant?
I mean, basically, it'd be one of those situations where it's like, we would have pricing. I like the $100 a month pricing. Unlimited physical therapy, $100 a month. Come in as much as you want. You can get manual therapy if we determine you need it. You get exercise, you get supervision, you get all that stuff. Quit when you want to quit. Come if you want to come. Like, just kind of that. That's the vision that I've always had. That's what I've always tried to kind of build toward. And what this does now, I don't know if you followed this Facebook post, but anybody watching, if you go into my Medicare billing for cash-based PTOTSLP Facebook group, I made a post, and like, this is, very like indicative of where we are today. I said, is Medicare covering, I said paying, but really I should have said covering. Is Medicare covering or paying for the physical therapist to get the patient to the goal, or paying for the physical therapist to get the patient to understand what needs to be done to get to the goal? And in plain language, what I mean is, if I evaluate a patient after a knee replacement, and one of the goals for that patient is independent sit to stand, right? Very basic. Is Medicare paying me until that patient gets to sit to stand? Or is Medicare paying me to show that person what needs to be done to achieve sit to stand and then let that person do it? I believe it's option number 2. I believe Medicare is paying me to show them what to do, confirm that they're capable of doing it, and then give them the program to do it. But there are lots and lots and lots of therapists that believe, no, Medicare is paying us to continue to treat that person until they achieve the goal. And if you look at how therapists write goals, they don't say, show you what to do to achieve independence. They say, once you reach independence. I think this is a massive disconnect. And I talked to other therapists this week. One was a lymphedema therapist who genuinely believed lymphedema is a lifelong problem that this therapist is treating. And based on how this therapist interprets Medicare guidelines, the therapist should be treating that patient to the end of life. I disagree. I do believe that we have value in every part of that, but that's not what Medicare is intended to pay for. So for me, I just want to rip the Band-Aid off. I want to clear all of that off of my plate. I want to say, look, what's the cheapest I could deliver a service that is still effective for what the client wants? And even if I only get paid from a portion of those, whether it's cash or insurance or whatever, how can I build a model that delivers the value, delivers the outcome in the current environment that potentially is still profitable? And that's where I want to go with it.
Yeah, I think most therapists consider Medicare or just any payer, like, they want to treat a patient almost neuro or geriatric, whatever, like almost indefinitely, as much as they'll pay. And then they complain about Medicare clawbacks. And this is probably one of the reasons why there's, Medicare cuts. I mean, it's one factor of many factors. But I was going to joke and say, like, there's no overbilling of Medicare for physical therapy, right? Like, everyone is just right on, doing exactly what Tony's saying, and like just teaching the Medicare beneficiary enough to complete the goal, to be safe, to be independent, and then immediately discharging them, right? I'm sure that happens all the time,
That's right.
So, okay. So really quick, I want to get back to the exit strategy. Your practice, Total Therapy Solutions, is it sellable?
It depends on what the buyer is buying. At this stage right now, if the buyer is buying it for cash flow, not sellable at all. Has a price tag of $0. If the buyer is buying it for referrals, like I told you, we had 25 referrals on the fax line the other day. We average 10 referrals a week. If you're looking at saying, okay, if I run a Facebook ad campaign, Google ads, I'm going to get this many referrals, cost per acquisition, I'm looking all that. Is this buying Total Therapy Solutions a better acquisition investment for the referrals than it is for something else? 100%. It's a very valuable resource for generating patient referrals. If somebody's looking at buying it as a combination, and you and I have talked about this, and I want to do this again, maybe next week, when we look at underperforming assets, somebody could come in, they could effectively buy the practice knowing I do a ton of 1, 2, 3 visit plans of care. I know practices in my community that would never, ever let a patient out of a plan of care in 1 or 2 visits. They're doing 12 to 15, 18 visit plans of care by default, no matter what. You sneeze and you get a 12 visit plan of care. So another practice owner could come in, look at this and be like, oh my gosh, what is this guy doing? It's crazy. It could be a $3 million business and he's letting it go. That's where the value would be if somebody was thinking about buying my practice. But if somebody's just absolutely looking at core metrics, looking at performance, looking at finance, no way does my clinic today have value for resale.
So depending on the owner, it would be sellable. It is by the buyer, depending on the buyer.
And the other aspect, obviously, they would be buying okay, we have Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield contracts that are closed to any new providers coming in. We have multiple other payer contracts that are closed to new providers coming in. So that's what they would be buying. Yes, it's a sellable asset for the right buyer.
Got it. And I know I kind of floated the horizon. So I know you're not under any pressure right now. And you kind of said that I guess you'll kind of keep it indefinitely, right? So that could be, who knows? That could be the next 5 or 10 years or whatever. But there's no immediate need. There's no immediate interest for you to get out. You like what you're doing. You like your team, your staff, the patient, the population. You like to do the evaluations, and but you also kind of have to do the evaluations because you're the only physical therapist and you have the PTAs there.
Yeah.
Okay. So where do we go from here?
I want to hear about your business model now. People have heard about me forever. You're the one doing what most of the people watching this want to do. You're outside from under the thumb of the insurance company. You are treating the consumer directly. If the consumer wants you to do things that an insurance company doesn't pay for, you don't care. You can do it. You can deliver the purest form of patient value. So tell us about your general business model.
Sure. So, I do say that we're out of network. I don't even really say that we're cash pay or private pay or cash-based PT or whatever. So we have a biller. Candidly, they have a big team, and the biller is obsessive about the business. And I'm front loading that by saying that is why we pay him his rate, which his rate is 10%. However, now that sounds like a lot because the Strata EMR is 7%, and you can find a biller for 5 or 6% or 7 or 8 or whatever percent. Okay. So we have a biller that does out-of-network billing only. So I knew this ahead of time when there's a lot of therapists and practices that are either solo or kind of my style in New York City, and they use this biller. The biller only bills out-of-network insurances. So United Healthcare, Oxford, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna, Cigna. Those are the top 5 normal ones. And then Oscar and many others do not even have out-of-network benefits. Humana does not have out-of-network. There's a bunch that do not even have out-of-network. Any EPO plan, they don't have it. On the front end, we'll check everyone's insurance. So we'll have someone reach out as a cold lead, a referral. They get referred to us. We check their insurance. We'll say hey, we'll check your coverage and then we'll let you know. So on the front end, the patients don't even know if we're out-of-network or cash or in-network or whatever. And we'll check everyone's insurance and benefits. If they have out-of-network benefits, then we'll say, okay, your deductible is, you got $1,000 deductible. Now we see really big deductibles that are $8,000 and $10,000, and those patients are basically going to pay out of pocket, or they say no and they go somewhere else. Okay, so we'll accept and we'll bill the out-of-network benefits once they hit their deductible. Everything that we say over a phone call, text, email, whatever, everything is transparent. We'll say, for example, if Tony has some, Cigna out-of-network, and let's just say for easy numbers, you have $1,000 deductible, we'll say, hey, Tony, your cost per visit for your knee pain, if you want to work with us because you said that you saw our Google reviews or whatever and you love what you see or whatever, or you refer to us, you have $1,000 deductible. We do 60-minute home visits. We have a specialist that specializes in knee issues or knee pain or whatever. And you said your goal is to get back to XYZ. We have a therapist that has availability this week or next week to help you with that. Your deductible is $1,000. Your cost per visit with us is $250 times 5 visits. On the 6th visit, and now this is assuming, because again, you said you're different and with, one or two or three visit plans of care. We kind of just have like an open door policy kind of thing. If you want to stop early or if you need to be discharged, we will. But we'll say your cost per visit with us would be $250 times 5 visits. On the 6th visit, your cost drops down to, and it depends on the coinsurance or the copay, the in-network copay. Usually it drops down to the in-network copay. So on the 6th visit, your cost per visit drops down to just $30, your $30 copay, and your insurance will be paying the rest of that. And then, so from the 6th visit and onward, your cost per visit would be $30. That's if you have out-of-network benefits. And then if you don't have out-of-network benefits, then we say, hey, kind of like you mentioned earlier, Tony, like we have many patients and clients that live in the city that live near you, and they have a similar insurance plan that does not have any out-of-network benefits. We don't accept or bill the in-network insurances because basically they don't pay enough for us to cover our costs to deliver a 60-minute home visit by an experienced doctor of physical therapy that specializes in your issue. So we have many people that decide to work with us that have your type of insurance plan. And if they decide to work with us, it's on an out-of-pocket basis. And then if I'm doing the phone call no, it's not a grudge purchase. It's not. We talked about this last episode, John. You got to go back.
That's why I'm saying it.
Yeah, it's not a grudge purchase so I'll say, so Tony, we don't accept your insurance. You have an APO plan or you have United Healthcare that has in-network only. There's no out-of-network benefits for us to bill. So it would be out of pocket. We have many people in the city near you, Tony, that have this United Healthcare plan that decide to work with us. And if they do so, it would be on an out-of-pocket basis. And then if I'm doing the phone call or someone else on my team, then we'd be quiet. Because I need Tony, the caller, the patient, the prospective patient, to lean in, figuratively lean in and say, so you don't accept this insurance. Okay, so like how much would it be out of pocket? I dropped the hint that we have many people that pay us out of pocket that have this type of insurance plan. So it lets you know that you're not unique. You're not like on an island. There's many people that do that action, and it kind of persuades them to let them know like, hey, don't you want to join this crowd of people that like also pay out of pocket for physical therapy sometimes? And so we need them to ask how much. If they do not ask how much, then we get off the phone and they're clearly not the ideal client for us. I don't know if I'm going too like granular on my business model, but like basically that's it. Like we have physical therapists that are licensed in New York and Connecticut and that offer home visits, and it's about half orthopedic and half neurological geriatric. If Tony lived in New York City, like he would be like the orthopedic busy professional entrepreneur business owner that we treat if he had back pain, knee pain, whatever, neck pain. So it's like an interesting mix of busy professionals that do not want to go to an outpatient office, or maybe they try like Luna or whatever, and they're like, oh my God, I had a Luna therapist, no offense. But I had a Luna therapist come and like they didn't do any hands-on manual therapy. So they had some expectations of like hands-on assessment, hands-on evaluation, whatever. Or some other home health company, like, oh, we had, I don't care, Fox Rehab or whatever, and they came for 15 minutes or some other Medicare Part A insurance, Medicare Part A home health agency. And they came for 8 minutes. They were just collecting a signature and that was it or whatever. So John, I know John's being a little sarcastic saying it's a grudge purchase. It's actually, they are voluntarily paying out of pocket for something that sometimes is covered, or some version of what we all do is covered by their main insurance or their Medicare or whatever. And we have people that of their own volition decide to pay out of pocket. So I don't know, maybe you have some follow-up questions from there, Tony.
Well, let's zoom way back and let's look at kind of, I'm trying to think, and I should know these numbers, but I don't. If I was to give like a real general breakdown, I already said probably 50 to 60% of my total income that actually goes into my bank account today comes from digital assets. Then let's say 10 to 15% of actual income comes from real estate. Most of the real estate value is in equity and appreciation, but actual money from rents and stuff like that, probably about 15%. And then I'm going to say the remainder probably comes from actual patient care delivered from the physical therapy operation. When you're looking at things like, is all of your income coming from patient care, whether it's be you or somebody working for you, or do you have income sources coming from other places? And what would something like that look like?
Most of it is from patient care, from my practice, my patient care, my therapist patient care. A few other random, I know you always like to ask about these income streams. So like with the acquisitions and stuff, like I'll have practice owners reach out about like independent business valuations. Like I said before on here, like I charge one practice owner like $5,400 for like 2 different documents. Like, I mean, it sounds like a lot. I mean, it was like, I had to look at their financials. I kind of have to, provide a deliverable, which like is not great because like I'm still like producing the income and I want to be managing businesses and not actually be the one producing income or the one producing the revenue. But that's one thing, like, or even like paid Zoom calls. Like I know you've done like the $5 a minute, like Clarity, whatever. And I haven't signed up yet, or I think I signed up and like I didn't make an account yet, but I will. So I've done like, paid calls because like I got a ton of people that reach out to pick my brain or ask for like free help. And I'm like, I don't have the time to do like, even if I've known them for 5 or 10 years, like I'm sorry. Like, I just don't have, especially now with a newborn, like I just don't have the time. And so like some will say, oh, well, like, I mean, like pay you. And I'm like, oh, okay. So here's the link,
right?
But like, I can't, I've been generous long enough. I feel like with free stuff. Right. So like, I have to put a dollar amount to it also to kind of filter out like who's serious. And then the ones that pay actually take action. The ones that ask for free stuff usually don't take action. That's a whole other thing. And then another thing with the acquisition side, like there's the searchfunder.com website. And I've made a little bit of money on selling a digital product, like maybe $1,000 or $2, like nothing, no big deal. But the letters that the template letters that I send to practice owners, like the 1-page sourcing letters, like that you've gotten before, it's like, hey, I'm so-and-so, and are you interested in selling your business? Like that, I sold, I don't know, a couple $1,000 of those, and it's like 6-letter templates, like 6 different letters, 6 different versions of my persuasion, my psychology, whatever, like speaking to their emotional triggers. And I sold that on Gumroad. I mean, I've done different things like that. I'm not monetizing my YouTube. The whole thing with YouTube is for lead generation for practice owners to find out about us and find out about me and reach out to me and all that. I think that's mostly it, unless I left something out. I don't know.
One of the things, so guys, if you don't follow Greg Eisenberg on his YouTube channel, he's growing his channel, but he's been an investor in a lot of startups and he's got great guests. One of the things that they were talking about, they share a ton of new business ideas that got me thinking about you specifically, Dave, and it was reiterated with what you said today, was he had a guest come on. He said, right now, anybody could start creating videos that are basically like Google ads for X. So I know you do Google ads. There's no good content out there right now for Google ads for a mobile-based physical therapy practice, Google ads for an out-of-network physical therapy practice, like 2 or 3 Google ads for X videos that are basic tutorials that take somebody through the process of creating a Google ad campaign. What are some of the things that you think about? How do you approach it? What budgeting do you use? And those are videos that you would just put out there publicly on YouTube. They'd be free for everybody, but they would start to generate some traction. They would establish you as an expert on that area. Let me shut my dog up. And then the other side of that is the out-of-network billing. So my DMs, my Facebook group, everybody is struggling all the time with overcoming that out-of-network billing situation. And you're one of the few people that have done it kind of at scale and have done it successfully, even if it's outsourcing to this individual, I think most people would be shocked to hear that you pay 10% of collections for the out-of-network billing service. I would tell you, I think it's totally reasonable because of the amount of time and effort and the lack of knowledge and understanding about that world. So like those two things, Google Ads for X, because you've done it for so long, you've shared content about it, and then a video about how you implement that out-of-network billing. I think those right there are 2 paid courses that don't take any of your resources. You've got years of experience and expertise. And I think that is a product that just needs to be created. Just one of these afternoons, baby's asleep, you're bored, you sit down at the computer and you turn on the camera and start recording. You asked me this question, so I'm going to ask it back to you. So are you building, or is the practice, the patient care aspect of that practice, a sellable asset for you right now?
Yes, I think it is. Yeah.
So if you sold it, do you have enough systems and enough, operations in place that you could either stay on board for that transition period or just step out of it and another company could come in and run it?
Yes. I mean, there's always more systems, like as a practice, as a business gets like into, I don't know, SMB scale or larger. There's always more systems to like automate things, but like some of the things you already mentioned about your practice, like the referral base and all that. So like my current or previous patient base, I believe is very valuable in terms of like who they are, the amount of money that they've spent with us, what they say about our practice, the word of mouth that is really challenging to buy. Some, very affluent families and things like that in the city. And then my understanding, or I guess the business's understanding. There is some that's kind of wrapped around me in terms of like, but the ads are already set up, like, and I just turn the ads up and down, depending on demand and supply and all that. So there's some that's wrapped around me in terms of like the calls. Like I love to do the calls. I used to, it's challenging. But now I don't care. It's like, I know some people are going to say no, and some people it's not for them. And for others, like I almost like, especially with the whole newborn thing, I'm trying to treat less and not leave my place as much and busy. Okay. So Health Mention, tell us about your M&A business. Okay. So Fieldmaker Group, we're speaking with practice owners about partnering or acquiring some or all their business. Fieldmaker is 3 of us. So it's myself, Sturdy McKee, and Marshall Sturman. Marshall Sturman is a forensic accountant. He's had a lot of physical therapy himself, but he's not a PT. And he helps us look at financials and due diligence, and he's super savvy with deals and valuations and, looking at the books, all that. Very, very valuable, especially for someone who does not have significant experience looking at financials and all that, and decoding everything and valuing a business and coming up with a logical risk or risk mitigated structure of a deal. Anyway, okay. And then Sturdy McKee is on the board and on our team as well. And he has been a PT, I forget, 20, 30 something years. He ran SF Sport and Spine. I didn't know this until recently, actually, that like he owned the majority of SF Sport and Spine, and Jerry Durham, I think, owned like a smaller piece. I used to think it was like a 50-50 partnership, and Sturdy was like, so Sturdy's my business coach, my mentor, he's on the board, and he's like an industry expert, and he coaches other practice owners. So he's on our board because I know he's super savvy. I've known him for years, and I asked him back in like 2019 or 2020 to do this, to have an entity that is looking at deals and partnerships. And so the idea with the M&A business, the Fieldmaker Group, is to take our expertise. So we have Marshall on the numbers, the financial side, Sturdy with operations, with ethical and legal billing, compliant billing, which ties into the EMR. So like he would be involved with the EMR and billing and all that, and scheduling and all that. And then for me, it would be like on the marketing and sales side. So it would be like, again, the Google ads, the Facebook ads. It would be sales scripts, sales, like ethical sales training to the front desk, how to sell a plan of care, how to sell the evaluation, how to speak to patients, all that. And so that covers most of the major aspects of any business, right? So marketing, sales, operations, and finance. And outside of that, I guess you could say like, product or service, which would actually be like the therapist delivering and fulfilling the service. So yeah, that's, by the way, that's why I put out the Dave Kittle Show and why I put out a ton of content. So it's basically what's the thing in the summer that attracts the bugs? The bug zapper. What's the name of that thing?
Yeah.
So it's like a pot of honey that attracts bees, whatever. So like the idea is to put out content that cannot be denied. What I mean by that is like I've interviewed practice owners that have sold to Cora, corporates, Cora, Select Medical, Ivy Rehab. I can't remember others. People like Jimmy Schreier have come on, and I got them to say, and he approved it. I got him to say like how much he sold his 2 practices for, and it was 1.4 million, pre-tax or whatever. And Ben Gelfand came on, and he said with 2 transactions, he made $7 million selling his practice and pre-tax. And so the idea is to put out content that cannot be denied, that is also not really out there. And I just knew from my previous experience with Rob Vining, shout out Rob Vining with PT Tech Talk, and doing videos with Tony and Jimmy McKay and other folks over the years. I just knew that if I put out that type of content, then I will get in front of more practice owners. They will tag other owners, send it, share it, whatever, consume it, reach out to me, and then say, then they hear at the end of the video, like that we're interested in partnering or acquiring or whatever. And so it builds the know, like, and trust. And hopefully that fills in some more gaps about what we're trying to do with mergers and acquisitions and partnerships and what I'm doing with Fieldmaker Group.
Yeah, that was awesome. We have a couple minutes left. You had mentioned in the show notes something about Chipotle.
Yeah, this is random. Okay, the phone method.
Yeah.
At Chipotle. Okay, so people are going into Chipotle, and this is not really, this is kind of business related ish. It's maybe there's factors of inflation or other factors, or I don't know. It's an interesting behavior. It's really like a random thing. People are going into Chipotle and they're ordering, right, Tony? And they're like, all right, so and they're recording it on their like a video. So they're like, all right, I'll take, and they're like this, they're like recording. All right, so I'll take a chicken burrito, black beans and mild pico de gallo and cheese and whatever, and they're like recording it. And what is happening? Well, what do you think happens?
I have no idea.
Okay, so what happens is the server that works at Chipotle feels like they don't want to do anything wrong, so they're over serving the person. They're putting more scoops or a heavier heaping scoop of each item into the burrito or into the burrito bowl or whatever it is. And people are posting this online and saying the phone method. So it's basically a way to juice, like you're trying to get more out of Chipotle. Now, maybe this is good, maybe this is bad, maybe it's stupid, but maybe 10 years ago going to Chipotle, they used to do heaping scoops of everything, right? I love Chipotle. I get, veggie burritos and burrito bowls or whatever. And then over the last, and this is even before COVID, but especially through COVID, they'll do a heaping scoop. And this is by the way, this is like in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, like different Chipotles that I've been to. They'll do a heaping scoop and then they'll shake some off and then they serve it. And then they do a heaping scoop of whatever. And then they shake it off a little bit. And then they serve, your burrito bowl or whatever. So employees at Chipotle were probably over the past 5 or 6 or whatever years, they were retrained on how to serve less, because then obviously Chipotle keeps more of the food products, so they make the food last longer, thinning it out or whatever you want to call it. And so the subtle fight or backlash, I don't even say backlash, but the subtle fight against that is the phone method, which I think it's so, I don't know, I think it's kind of ridiculous, but I get it because I've been on both sides of this as a Chipotle customer. I don't know if there's any good takeaway. Maybe it's not right. Maybe it's the people fighting back against a corporate who's almost trying to like do downsizing in a way, right? So I don't know if there's anything to learn from this. It's just an observation.
No, there's absolutely lessons to learn from this. I want to take Chipotle into next week, Tuesday, 8:30 a.m. for the next show, because there's so many lessons we can take from Chipotle. I used to love Chipotle, one of my favorite restaurants by far. They got into a bunch of legal issues. I can't remember what year. They had a bunch of undocumented workers. All of these individuals left, and now the quality went like to zero. It's horrible. I hate Chipotle. It's still a better option than other things, but I get so mad every time I have to order Chipotle for my kids. Then you're right, they pre-framed, they got it into our heads that like you get these heaping portions, way more than you expected. Now, if you order through the app, which we only exclusively order through the app, you get a fraction of what you even expect to get. It's worse than anything. But the lesson about the phone method that you're talking about is, even in my physical therapy clinic, even though I try with all, everything I do to be the best that I can possibly be, if any of you go to my patient-facing YouTube channel, you'll see a lot of videos where I'm sharing information with real patients. I am always a better therapist when that camera is on. And I think one of the most detrimental things that happen with HIPAA privacy, and we need to respect privacy, but it allows average and bad therapists to hide in the shadows. If I wanted a family member to get the best possible patient care, I'd flip on a camera every single time. I would record what that therapist is doing, because that therapist subconsciously or consciously is going to do 10 times more. They're going to work so much harder to provide the best possible patient care experience because they know that camera is watching, and so go ahead. What are you going to say?
I'm so glad I brought this up. Tony magically and perfectly makes the connection between my random observation and physical therapy and patient care and your practice that you're watching and listening, your business, and our profession as a whole. I love it. I can't wait to explore more next week.
Yeah, let's take it on to Tuesday. We're out of time. Any closing thoughts for today? Final shot.
Parting shot. Exit strategy, even if you are 5, 10, 15 something years into your business, I think it's a good idea to take the first step and ask yourself, like, is this sellable? It doesn't matter if you're an absentee owner, which it's obviously sellable. And if you are still treating 40, 50, 60, whatever hours a week, and like Tony said, how many roles and responsibilities are wrapped around you, you need to kind of think about what would be the replacement cost. Would you need another admin person, another whatever, billing person, clinic director, manager, whatever? You need to think about some of those things. You could also speak to like a broker or advisor, and they would probably tell you some of those things as well. So you can speak to a broker advisor, Chris Vandeford. There's a few names that I only recommend. And if you want to email me, I'll connect you to some of the brokers that I like and trust. I can't think of some of the others off the top of my head that I've interviewed on my show, but Mike Pekatowski, email me and I'll connect you guys over email. I don't get any fee or any connection or anything, but it would be a good idea to maybe speak to a broker advisor sometime for free. They don't charge you. And they can also tell you, like, briefly, very quickly, like, is your business or practice sellable? Where are you at? And if not, like, sometimes like Mike Pekatowski and some of the others, like, and Chris Vandeford will kind of give you like a rough game plan. Like, hey, here's where you're lacking. Like, you need to work on XYZ over the next 12 to 18 months and then come back and then maybe we can sell it. So that's my parting shot. How about you?
Yeah, parting shot. I mean, we learned everything we need to know about business in PT school. We would never do an evaluation for a new patient, start a plan of care without a discharge plan. The discharge plan is the exit strategy. You follow the same exact framework. You just apply it to your business instead of a human. That's the parting shot. Dave, thank you so much for joining me once again.
Thank you, Tony.
Hey, it's Dave Kittle. Are you a healthcare business owner or physical therapy practice owner who is looking to figure out your succession plan or exit strategy? We might be able to help. And in fact, we may be interested in acquiring your practice. If you're interested, you can reach out to me. Shoot me an email at dave@conciergepainrelief.com. painrelief.com. That's DAVE at CONCIERGE, painrelief.com. Or you can call me at any time, 646-781-8884.